And then just to reiterate to the audience, we are asking and seeking volunteers to share their resumes so that we can do a resume review at the end of this session, in the second half of this session. So you're welcome to submit those files in chat. And as Jeff mentioned, if you prefer to remain anonymous, you can change the name at the top of your resume and even change the company names if you'd like. But it makes the workshop really interesting to be able to share live resumes and have a discussion about what we like, what's good, and then also some areas for improvement. So at this time, if anybody would like to share their resume, please go ahead and submit that into chat. And I am sharing my PowerPoint slides. And Jeff, I'll do a quick test. Can you see my PowerPoint slide? Good.
Way to go.
Excellent. And as Jeff mentioned, we will be using the interactive functions of Zoom today to make this fun and interactive for you. And as Jeff had everybody go into the participant box, I'd like for you to also go into the participant box and give me a green check mark if you can hear my voice and see my screens okay. Good, I'm seeing some check marks. Now I'm going to pull up my monitor so I can monitor the participants. Good. Good, I'm seeing some green check marks. So if everybody can go into, everybody who's on Zoom, go into the participant box and click on the green check mark if you can see my slide. Good. Excellent. And then also we will be using the chat function. This is your way of asking questions of us, and then we will also be asking questions for you. And this time I'd like to start with a thought-provoking question. How do you think you could improve your own resume? You know, as you're thinking about your resume and you're joining this session, and I applaud you for taking time out of your day to really learn more about resume writing and making your resume more effective. What thoughts do you have about what you could do to improve your resume? If you could click on the chat function and type your responses into chat, that would be great. This time. And I'll watch for those messages. Good, I'm starting to get some responses as well. And thank you, I've got a volunteer who has shared a resume. I will get that saved. So while people are typing in their comments, what do you think you could improve about your resume? I will go ahead and save this one resume for us to look to at the end of our session. So some of the comments I'm seeing coming into chat, and when you're seeing me look over here, I'm looking at my second monitor where I have the chat box open. It's not that I'm ignoring you. So I'm looking at the chat box. Somebody said they'd like to cut out what's not valuable and use more action verbs with accomplishments. Good. And there's lots of places on Google. You can Google action verbs for resumes to get additional ideas. And make sure you have several versions for different jobs. Thank you for mentioning that. And we'll talk about how to do that. Good. And so by way of introduction, I've had over 30 years of experience as a hiring manager. I worked for EDS that was acquired by HP in 2008. And then I took early retirement in 2012 because I knew so many people that had gotten laid off, and I wanted to go to work as a recruiter, and I loved recruiting. So I went to work as an agency recruiter, and I had excellent training and did some corporate recruiting work. And then I went to work for a great staffing firm called Next Step Recruiting, and then I retired last year to become a career coach to share all the tips and tricks that I've learned. And I've placed candidates in a variety of different roles. And since last year, I've volunteered every week for the Dallas Pit Crew. That's the practice interview team where you can practice doing mock interviews. And we're still doing that using Zoom technology. So if you ever want to do a practice interview with a mock interview team, you can submit your resume to dallaspitcrew dallaspitcrew@gmail.com, dallaspitcrew@gmail.com, and request a time to do that. You submit your resume and a job description, and we'll do that for you and also give you feedback. And then last year I went through the process, the training program and everything to become certified as a professional career coach. And I want to thank our second volunteer for submitting a resume. So at this time, we've got enough resumes to cover the last half of the session. So we are good to go, Jeff. And now at this time, I'd like to introduce my co-host and guest speaker today, Aaron Alaniz. So Aaron, I think you're off mute.
Yes, I'm off mute. Thank you so much.
Good. So you're welcome to introduce yourself real quickly.
Yeah, I'm really excited to be here with you guys. I currently serve as the operations director for Next Step Recruiting. I handle HR, internal recruiting, of course, marketing, and some other areas, in addition to also serving clients and candidates of my own. I have been a manager and a hiring manager for over 20 years. The last 10 to 12, we'll call it 10 to 12, have been in the recruiting industry and have been really focused on helping people get jobs and fine-tuning their resumes, helping to coach them through some tough interview situations, maybe some not so pleasant previous experience, that kind of thing. I've worked in multiple industries. I've even owned my own business a few times and had the opportunity to kind of leverage all of that experience working with youth, college, and career-age individuals, working with leadership and helping them to really take a step up in their professional skills. And I am just so excited to be here. Thank you guys so much for inviting me.
Great. Thank you, Aaron. Yes, for the audience, Aaron and I have co-taught a lot of classes together over the past year, and we always have fun doing it. And I wanted to invite him to be an additional perspective, especially from a recruiter perspective. He has reviewed hundreds, if not thousands, of resumes and presented hundreds of them to hiring managers. So I thought he might be an additional valuable perspective for you all to hear from. And if you have questions as we're going through our presentation today, you're welcome to submit those in chat, and I'll be watching those, and Jeff does a good job helping me keep up with the questions because sometimes it's hard to do two things at once. And here's our agenda for our program today. Again, it's in kind of two parts. In the first part, we'll do a quick review of applicant tracking systems. And at this time, I want to ask, give me a green check mark if you have seen one of my presentations before about resume writing. So if you've seen one of my resume workshops, click the green check mark, and if you haven't, click the red X. Good, I'm seeing several answers here. And what we do every week is I switch it up a little bit. I do a little bit of research, or based on the questions that have come up, I add additional content in the first part. And I see a mixture of people. So welcome back to the people who've seen this before. We have some additional things to share with you today. And then for the people that have never attended one of these before, I always provide a little bit of basic content and review that so that everybody always gets the most pertinent information. So welcome to all who have joined today. And so we'll talk about applicant tracking systems. And then we'll talk about what you should know about recruiters, and I'll have Aaron speak especially about that. And then I did some research this way on some important statistics relating to resumes and hiring managers that I thought you should know. And then we'll walk through key components of a resume, pause for any questions and answers that you might have, and then we'll spend a few minutes reviewing those sample resumes that a couple of people were nice enough to submit. Was everybody ready to get started? Good. So first, a word about applicant tracking systems. These are the systems when you're applying online and you're submitting your resume or a cover letter into a system. These are the systems that take your data. And what these systems do is they parse the information. They read the information in your resume file and store it into the database for their applicant tracking systems. And if you have any special characters, fancy boxes, fancy formatting things, that could throw off the parsing process. And so your data may not get loaded properly. So you want to have a clean version of your resume without special characters, and do not use the header and footer function in Microsoft Word because it won't read that data when you're submitting to an ATS system. But what you do want to do is make sure that you are including major keywords and skills that that those hiring managers and that job description is looking for. And a way to test your resume against a job description is to use a function online called jobscan.co. It's an online tool where you can submit your resume and a job description, and it'll do a match, tell you if you're a 30% match or a 70% match based on the language that you use and the keywords that you use. So that's a good test. And then you can also submit a resume as an attachment. And I encourage you to do that, because as a corporate recruiter, when I was going through the ATS systems and looking at all the candidates, usually 300 or so, I'd click on those resumes that were attached so I could see it at a glance information. And I honestly didn't have time to click on the cover letters. Many ATS systems ask you to do that. You can do it. I wouldn't spend a lot of time on it. And Jeff will be uploading a nice little template you can use to make it easy to create a cover letter. Jeff will be uploading a couple of templates in the chat box for you all at some point during the seminar today, with a sample resume and a sample cover letter. Now, some people choose to create two versions of their resume, one that's ATS friendly and one with lots of special formatting. Myself, to keep it easy, I only just kept one version. So that's kind of a personal choice there. If you have any questions about this, you're welcome to submit those in chat at any time. And Aaron, do you have any comments about ATS systems, or we can move to the next slide about recruiters?
You know, I feel pretty confident you covered it well. I would just reemphasize that special characters and special formatting and different colors and headers and footers are really make it a challenge for the ATS to pick it up, and you will likely be passed over just because of the formatting. So it's important to keep it simple.
Great, thank you. So Aaron, if you would like to share what you think people need to know about recruiters.
Yeah, so a couple of different things I'd like to share. I mean, just one is to keep in mind that recruiters can be a great resource for you. Their goal is to be your advocate, right? And there's two different types, right? There's an agency recruiter that you might work with, and then of course there's a corporate recruiter. Both can introduce you to a hiring manager just from a different perspective. I think it's important to note that when working with recruiters, you want to make sure that you understand exactly how they like to be communicated to, and make sure that you're also explaining to them how you like to be communicated to, because often I find in the agency setting, I may hear multiple times from the same person, and if we had not had that conversation about, you know, what level of communication we need to continue to move the process forward, if I had all 30 candidates I was working with at one time, you know, constantly calling me, asking me for an update, and we didn't have an understanding, it would make the process somewhat clunky and very disjointed. So in the meeting, in the interview that we have, we definitely want to set a boundary. And if the recruiter doesn't set that boundary with you, just ask. Just ask them, how do you best like to be communicated to? How often shall I follow up? And then stick to your side of it, right? If they don't follow up, that's something that's a different conversation altogether. But with agency, of course, an agency recruiter is working to highlight your information to the hiring manager that is their client. And of course, they're going to give you instruction or coaching based on your resume that they have, and based on the job that they're currently looking to fill, and based on your feedback, if you're a good fit for that, if you're a good environment fit, all of those things. And just, I would urge you that if they give you feedback to get the resume back to them, that you give it back to them quickly. There have been many times that somebody they were the best fit, but because they didn't get their resume in time, the job was filled by the time they got the resume 2 or 3 days later. It usually is a same day type situation, and it really does need to be turned around that fast. I know it seems maybe extreme, but I mean, recruiters in the agency world move fast and furious. In a corporate setting, it is somewhat different from the standpoint that they're representing only one company, and they are really focused on those hiring managers that they're working with. And I think that probably the best resource to give best information about that would be Carol, actually, because she's functioned as a corporate recruiter, where an agency corporate recruiter, like I have been for our agency, would operate very much like I do with external employees. So I'll let Carol comment on the corporate recruiter side.
Yes, you know, with corporate recruiters, I worked in that type of function for several years in a small tax consulting firm, and we did have an ATS system. And when we posted a job, we'd get 100, 200, maybe 300 candidates. And the system would kind of sort through them for us, but there were a lot of resumes to look through. And I often even didn't get through the top 10%. So if you do apply directly online, you often have to do an extra step to really get noticed, either by contacting somebody at that company that you may know to forward your resume through, or try to contact the recruiter that posted that job, or if you don't know the name, contact the manager or leader of the recruiting function. So it is important to do that. And I'd like to ask a question of the audience. If you could go into the participant box and click the green check if you've ever worked with an agency recruiter, you know, somebody that can help you. And agency recruiters and corporate recruiters can be a good resource for you in terms of giving you feedback about your resume and the job market. So I'm seeing a lot of red X's. So if you want that opportunity to work with an agency recruiter, Erin, is it okay if they contact you because you work at a staffing agency? You could be
absolutely
a good point of contact. So, and if Erin and his agency aren't in your industry or job function, can't help you, he could refer you maybe to other people, but Erin could be a good point of contact if you've never had the opportunity to sit down with an agency recruiter and get their feedback about the marketplace and your resume. So I encourage you for that. One other note about corporate recruiters, if they're doing their job well, they will have met with that hiring manager and they should really know about the job requirements. So one good question to ask them if you're ever talking to a corporate recruiter is, have you met with the hiring manager? You could also ask that of an agency recruiter. And if
absolutely,
ask them for information because that'll help you prepare for the interview.
I'll add that a question that we ask our hiring managers are, what are the top 3 skills that you absolutely have to have? What are the nice to haves? And then what can you do without? And so we should have that information as an agency or corporate recruiter in that conversation. And you're welcome to use that language when you're asking the questions.
Good, good. Yeah, and somebody asked the question, and thank you, Erin, for answering, who uses ATS systems. And virtually, you know, any corporation does, and then agencies also post jobs on behalf of their clients and then keep those together in an ATS system. So good question there. Okay, so I was doing a little bit of research for y'all this week, and I found these statistics that I thought I should share. And these are different sources, Career Builder and also the Motley Fool. I think they have a show on NPR. And interesting statistics. 40% of hiring managers spend less than a minute reviewing resumes. That's very true. And when they come up on the screen, they may spend, and some spend 25%, spend less than 30 seconds. So you want to make sure that your resume makes it evident that you are a good match for that job. And we'll give you some ideas about how to do that. And 75% of HR managers have caught a lie on a resume. And I know we have a couple people out there that are HR people in the audience. If you've ever caught a lie on a resume, give me a green check mark. I know there's a couple of my HR buddies out there. If you've ever caught a lie, I have. I saw somebody that fabricated, one situation where somebody had fabricated, they worked for a company when they had not, and somebody who said they had a PhD and a master's when they had not. So make sure that you don't fall into that trap. And then for 35% of employers or hiring managers, an unprofessional email address is a major problem. So you want to make sure that the email address you use is professional based on your name. Like mine is Carol or Brickell.Carol because Carol.Brickell was taken, but Brickell.Carol@yahoo.com. I didn't put Carol the cat lady at yahoo.com or something like that. And
people would be alarmed if they knew what we read on resumes, right?
Yes, yes. I'm like, did you really use that email address name? And then 70% of hiring managers disqualify resumes because of grammatical mistakes and typos. And I will say 90% of the resumes I look at do have mistakes in them. Grammar, verbs, typos, misspellings. Yes. So what percentage, Erin, when you think about looking at resumes, what percentage that you've reviewed do you think have errors in them?
I would even say it's closer to 95 to 98%. And it can even be something as simple as spacing, that just the space was wrong, or they, punctuated a sentence when it wasn't a complete sentence, or the tense was wrong. I mean, there's so many different things that people can look at. It's so important to really have a couple of set of eyes take a look at it to make sure you've caught all the different areas. Because I think it's silly that someone would lose a job over a period, but it's happened multiple times in my experience.
Yes. Thank you. And then this is an opinion, but a resume that's longer than 2 pages is a deal breaker for some percentage of hiring managers. 2 seems to be kind of the general sweet spot for corporate jobs for resumes. Now, for some situations like government, higher education, those resumes, and sometimes highly technical jobs, tend to be a little bit longer to show those additional details, certifications, publications, or whatever. But 2 pages seems to be kind of the sweet spot for a lot of places. Any other questions, comments from my panelists here on this page? Now we'll move into some characteristics of good resumes, and we'll kind of fly through this kind of quickly. And if you have any questions, go ahead and submit those into chat. Really, your goal for your resume is to make it easy for the system and the people to determine you're a good match for a job. And the people, I mean, HR people, recruiters, or the hiring managers. And as a 1-page resume too little, somebody asked. For people that have had 10 plus years of experience, I would say 1 page might be pretty small to do that. I've seen 1-page resumes for recent college grads, but most people, I would say should go on to about 2 pages. Now, some people have created a different type of document called a 1-page bio, and that's a different type of document. You could Google, 1-page executive biography to see examples of what that might look at. And that's more of a device to use for networking sessions or informational discussions. Okay. So in terms of characteristics for a good resume, with your formatting, you want to have enough white space to make it easy to read, to make those keywords pop out. You want the overall length to be 2 pages, plus or minus, depending on your industry and situation. Number of years, you have 3 options. One is you can show everything, like I did. On my resume, I got a job at the age of 60, and I showed everything from 1980 on. That worked for me. I was networking with people that knew me. They knew my background. They knew I'd been around the block. That worked for me. That's a personal decision. And it works for some people. The other option is to chop it off after 10 to 15 years. But I can say as a recruiter, when I get those, I'd usually say, do you have more experience beyond this? And everybody'd say, yeah, but I didn't want to show it. And then during the interview, I'd ask them a question. They'd start giving me an example with a company name. I'd look at the resume and say, that's not on your resume. I said, oh, but it was so long ago. And it would just cause confusion. So the other option is you can go into detail about your maybe most recent 10 or 15 years, and then add another heading like professional experience, but another heading that says previous relevant experience, and list the company names and job titles you had with some of those older jobs. And you don't have to include the dates for those if you don't wish. But that way you're showing the whole picture, you're showing the progression, you're showing all the industries that you've had experience with. So any comments about any of these, Aaron? Anything you'd add?
No, I mean, it's spot on. I think the 3 to 4 pages should be reserved for special situations and targeted job searches that require more experience explanation. Past that, I mean, you should be able to fit everything in 2 pages. Excellent. If you have more than that, reevaluate. Reevaluate.
Yes. And somebody just asked me, which characters are ATS friendly? And I did a little research on this. Those little plain default bullet things, those are okay. I know specifically like Workday accepts those.
Wouldn't you say, Carol, that anything that you don't have to go searching for to add into a document, like if it's just default, it should be ATS friendly?
Yeah, like commas and apostrophes. Exactly. And yes.
I had a question. How about ampersands? Are they okay? Ampersands?
Ampersands, are ampersands okay?
Yeah, ampersands instead of the word A-N-D.
I would tend to want to spell out, it looks a little more professional, unless it's like a brand like P&G
Right.
or something.
Okay.
I agree with Carol.
I think that
I
should
agree
be
with that.
okay. All right, thank you for that
Anytime you
question.
can, yeah, anytime you can do formal writing versus informal or casual writing, you want to err on the side of formal, my opinion.
And then I wanted to share some guidance from the organization where I got my certification. And they echo that resume should be easy to read, free from spelling and grammatical errors. Spell out any acronyms the first time in parentheses, and then you can use them after that. There are some exceptions like SAP. Nobody knows, it stands for those people, the founders' names, but nobody knows what that is. But in most cases, you want to spell out acronyms. And you want to make sure you're highlighting or using words and language and skills that are related to the job, and include qualitative and quantitative accomplishments where you can. We'll show an example of that. And then no graphics, pictures, underlines, or boxes for the ATS version. And these are key components of a resume, and there may be some additional components, but these are standard ones based on the template that I've typically used, which happens to be very similar to the template used by the organization where I got certified, and also the template used by the people that teach the career transition workshop. It's all very similar, very familiar looking, and some people say it's kind of old fashioned, but it's very familiar and it's very easy for recruiters and hiring managers to review it. So the components are a header, summary. We'll talk about the key accomplishments section, which is often used especially for sales related jobs, a professional experience, and then you can include previous relevant experience if you want to include some older jobs as well in education and software. So Erin, I was wondering if you could kick us off and talk about the heading and summary section and professional experience section.
Absolutely, absolutely. So in the heading area, it's important not to make this a formal header as if in your document, because it could cause some challenges loading into the ATS. So you just want to simply put your name. I know that there's some questions about whether to put your zip code or your city, that kind of thing. I prefer not to. I think others have a different opinion, and I think it can go either way. You want something simple, your phone number as well. The most accurate phone number, it's important. It's not a phone number you'll never answer. I have lots of resumes that I call on, and they go to voicemail, or the voicemail's not set up. It is very challenging for a recruiter who is limited in time and scope to have to chase someone that way. If we can leave a message or drop an email, it works, obviously, in a much more efficient way. And then the email, of course, as Carol already mentioned, to make sure that it is a professional email, first dot last or last dot first initial, last name at Gmail, Outlook. There's lots of options there, of course. And then your LinkedIn profile is always great to put on there, just to be able to showcase that you have a professional brand, that you are out in front of, not just that you've taken some time to make sure that your career and your professional, profile is put out there. Anything to add there, Carol?
No, I'm good. And we just had a question that came in that applies.
Let's see what it is.
Screen. I'll answer this question quickly. For an ATS, should we use tabs to space the header instead of a table? Yes. Yeah, I would not set up a table. And then also in the table in the summary section with the areas of expertise, I did exactly that. I used the tabs instead of setting up a table, because that kind of has special characters in it. So excellent question. Thank you.
That's a great point, by the way, Jay. Thanks for pointing that out. In terms of the summary and profile, I mean, I honestly am disappointed when I see an objective, to be honest, because I have to delete it right away. And so I know somebody probably pined over trying to figure out what they're going to write in it. And the objective is not as relevant today as it might have been in the past. The summary is most, it's just a summary of your expertise, why you match the job. You want to make sure that they're very, it's keyword oriented. And as we talked about, matching the job that you're applying for. When you do a profile, it should just be, the very first part should be 2 to 3 sentences or 4 max, I would say. Carol, do you have anything to add on the first part of that?
No, that's great. I think you've
Okay.
covered it. Thank you.
All right, and then in areas of expertise, I know that
We'll go back.
just real quick, you want to take a look at what you've got versus your job description, and you want to make sure that you've got 9, no more than 12, areas of expertise that match the job description that are of course relevant and that you actually have, and then in that part you can modify for each application. We can go to the next slide. Sorry about that. And then key accomplishments. It's important that you also recognize that what revenue you may have brought to the company, what cost savings, what areas you've streamlined processes, any way that you have added value to the company, whether that's increased revenue, cost savings, or streamlined processes, that you can accentuate that, put it in both quantitative and qualitative feedback on your resume is most important. All right. And of course, you want to do a chronological resume. I have ran into quite a few functional resumes. I'm not real sure who is telling people to do that, but I would like them to stop, mainly because we have, as recruiters, for what I do in an agency world, I have never had a client accept a functional resume unless it was a consultant and it was a full-time consultant in a different company that I worked with. So that is the only time I've ever had a client accept a functional resume. And it's super important that we do chronological. We make it easy to read. I would say 5 to 7 bullet points under each job that's relevant to the job you're applying to. It should not be overly complex and utilize any industry specific jargon unless it's appropriate, like a highly technical job.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you, Aaron, for that. And thanks for talking about the importance of using a chronological resume and not a functional resume. Thank you.
Absolutely.
A lot of questions about that.
I had a question. This is Drake.
Sure.
Under the company, is there a maximum for the number of bullet points you should put under there? Because I noticed on the sample here.
Yeah, thank you. That's a good lead in for our next slide.
Exactly.
Excellent.
Okay.
Yeah, and as Aaron mentioned, 5 to 8 bullet points, that's really the number, because I've seen some with 10, 15, 20 bullets, and a hiring manager is never going to read that many. And the bullets should focus on results, and it shouldn't just read like just a job description. And I have a fun little trick that you can use with your resume to make it more results oriented. You can look at it, and this is an actual case study when I was coaching somebody about one of the bullet points on their resume. They had a bullet that said they developed basic programs to automate the conversion and migration of data. That's kind of cool, but I said, well, so what? And that's just a fun way of asking, what was the end result? What was the accomplishment? What was the outcome? What was the benefit? And when I asked, so what? He said, well, actually, it reduced the data migration time, reduced errors, and increased our client confidence. And so then he rewrote his resume to start with a stronger verb that focused on results, that he reduced data migration time and eliminated errors, increased stakeholder confidence by developing that basic program. Good. And if anybody has any further questions, feel free to submit those in chat. And then a couple of quick slides before we get to our resumes to review is, from a formatting perspective, it's important that if you've had multiple roles within a company, that you should highlight the time. And Jeff, you're welcome to annotate this while I'm talking if you'd like, if you're available to do this. What's beneficial if you've been at multiple roles at one company is to highlight the time you've been there, the entire time for the company. And then in each role, you can highlight in parentheses the time that you had each individual role. And this is important because I've seen many resumes where people put those dates that Jeff is, thank you, Jeff, for highlighting those in green. People put those out right, justified, and bold. And so it looks like they've had 3 different jobs and they've hopped around. But in this case, they actually worked for one company and were promoted several times. So that shows a much stronger story. So thank you for that, Jeff. Good. And another common question I get is, how do we handle company names that have changed? And here are a couple of options you can use. You can say the company name, formerly whatever. And like when I retired from HP, that it acquired EDS. My resume said HP, formerly EDS at the time in 2012. That was the proper name. And then, or the other option is I could have said EDS acquired by HP in 2008. And somebody asked a question, a really good question. Is it acceptable to use less bullet points on positions that are not directly relevant to the position to which you're applying? Yes, you could use a few less bullet points there. And the rule of thumb is never have just one, always have at least two. And if it's an older job, you can just put it under previous relevant experience and just list the company name and your job title too.
I like to jump in just for a second and
Thank
say
you, Jeff.
that don't put a bullet point on your resume if it doesn't relate to the job requirement, because if you start telling the recruiter other things you've done that don't relate to what they're focused on, trying to find somebody to fill role X. And if you tell them, yeah, I do X, but also do Y and Z, they don't care. And the goal of a resume is just to get that phone call for them to reach out to you. So just tell them what's on the job description. Make it easy for them to go, yes, this person has these skills.
Good. Thank you, Jeff. Good. And then on your resume, you do want to list education and be honest about that. If you don't have a bachelor's, but you went to college for a few years, list the name of the school and the years that you were there. Do not say bachelor's. It makes it look like you're saying you had a degree when you didn't. And I've had quite a few conversations with people about that. And software skills, I often get the question, should I put Microsoft Office and Excel on my resume? Doesn't everybody have that? Well, if the job description requires it, I think that's a good idea. What do you think, Aaron?
I tell you, more than ever, I have had to ask people, well, if you've got that experience, can you answer me the question as to why is it not on your resume? And they honestly just say, I didn't know it was relevant. Just exactly what you said. Well, doesn't everybody have that in school now? I was like, well, that's fine that you say that, but that's not how keywords work.
Yeah.
So we need you to add it for sure.
Yes. Yes. That ATS is going to be looking for Excel. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. Good. My favorite part here. We've talked a lot about aligning your resume to a job description. And I'm going to turn on the annotate button myself here. And so what you really need to do to be able to align your resume is study the job description, either print it off or look at it online and highlight the keywords and skills that they're looking for. And I'm highlighting just a few here to point out, and be sure that in your resume you are using, this language. Let's see, process flow charts, here we are. So you really want to study these. They're looking for Agile, they're looking for Visual Basic. Make sure if you have Agile experience and Visual Basic, list it. And if you don't have it, maybe take a quick class on it and do a little project yourself and put it there. But you really want to study the job description, study the language they're using. Try to get in the head of that hiring manager to find out what kind of animal are they looking for. Yesterday, I was coaching somebody, and when we went through this process, he sent me a job description and a resume, but once we just really analyzed the job description, I asked him, I said, do you think your resume aligns to it? And he said, no. And it actually goes, I don't even think I should apply. Once he really studied it. So I really recommend it. It'll save you time in the long run. Does anybody, either Jeff or Aaron, do you have any additional comments about this?
I don't have any additionals.
Okay. I would say this is probably the #1 topic as a career coach that I spend time with people on this particular topic. And one thing I'd like to mention, during this pandemic year as a career coach, I am offering a free session to anyone who does have a need. And this happens to be one topic area, but I can help you with any challenge. And no challenge is too great to just dig into and try to solve. So if anybody does have a need, you're welcome to reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I am offering a free 1-hour Zoom session to anyone who does have a need. Pause briefly for questions, and then we have a few minutes left to look at these resumes have been shared with us.
I did post the sample business analyst resume and the sample cover letter. Both of those are in your chat box. You can when you click on it, it'll download. Just remember where it downloads to so that you can find it on your computer. Otherwise, you have to come back next Thursday and we'll send it to you again for you to save someplace. So.
Okay, great. Good. And I'm using this time to get to my files so I can upload there and display the resumes that have been shown. Okay. There we go.
So a question while you're doing that, a question came in. I've had interviewers say that I might be overqualified. Maybe streamline the resume? I guess that's a question.
How do you handle those kind of situations?
Did you ask me? I'm sorry.
Yes. Have you ever had candidates that say that they get the feedback that they're overqualified? How do you handle those situations?
Well, it really depends on the job that they're applying for and like kind of where they are in their career, right? And it really does matter. And I know people say, I know their primary objective many times when we have that is, I just want a job and contribute and be able to, make a living for my family, right? And I totally understand where that's coming from, right? Because I've been there before, right? But it's important that we try to help them match with the appropriate job, because the client's fear, or at least the hiring manager's fear, is as soon as something better comes along, you're out. Because there's a lot of things around pay, position in the company, power, structure, how that might look, that kind of thing. And you have to really be able to tell that story right. And if you don't, my advice to someone in that scenario is consider being a full-time consultant. Consider consulting or contracting in a role where it wouldn't be as important for you to have to prove your case for the perm job right then. You have an opportunity to have a contract relationship with someone. You can prove yourself that you're not whatever they think you are, if that makes sense, and give them a chance to go over the hump. The other way is to, like Jeff had mentioned, to streamline your resume potentially. I have 3 contract recruiters right now, and they're very much block and tackle type recruiting positions, but I had HR leaders apply for it. My feedback back to them, I said, I'm going to send it because you've asked me to, but I can tell you that that's not going to fly with the manager. And because she's looking for someone that's going to be more operational or tactical and less strategic. And what happened was exactly what I thought. I'm going to pass on this person because they've got too much experience, because I don't think they'll be happy doing this job. Right. And those are considerations that we kind of have to work through. And what I tell people, streamline your resume, take out some strategic words, add more tactical words, that kind of thing, if you're truly interested in that role.
Yes.
But usually by the end of that conversation, I find that they're not really interested in that role. We really need to work to find them something else.
Okay. Yes. And to the person that posted that question, if you want to talk through that situation, feel free to reach out to me. We can talk about your situation. And I had a situation when I retired from HP. I was a regional HR manager, and I was applying for a job as an individual contributor recruiter. And so I had to go in with a very strong message as to why I wanted to do that. And I told them, at this point in my career, this is the work I want to do. I want to help people find jobs. And so I was able to convince them that, yeah, I want to take actually a step down, because at this point in my career is kind of the afternoon of my career. That's the job I wanted. Okay, good. So if you need any additional help, just feel free to reach out. So Jeff, are you able to see the job applicant resume up on the screen? Okay, thank you. Good. So thank you for the person who submitted this. And what I'm going to do is slowly scroll down the resume, and I'd like for you all as audience members to look at this and think of things that you like about the resume or any suggestions for improvement, and feel free to type in some comments into the chat. So I'm going to scroll down. There's a kind of an opening section, sample target. Okay. There's an experience section with company name and dates, titles. Okay, Another company, and then some, looks like some previous roles maybe for that company. Good. And then in education and associations and other. Okay, good, good. So if anybody has any comments just based on the quick review, and that literally is how long a recruiter may spend looking at a resume real quickly. So if you have any comments, feel free to write those in. So at the top, that's great to have the name, location, and an email address. The one thing that's missing up here, if you know what's missing in the top header, type it in real quickly in the chat function. And I'll talk about something else for a minute. If you could tell me what you think is missing in terms of pertinent contact information. Somebody said LinkedIn, you're fast, good. And that's even more and more and more critical right now. It's to include your LinkedIn URL. And there's a way on LinkedIn you can customize it and make it shorter than the default LinkedIn. You can Google how to do that and make it, put it to the top of your resume. Now this one has a different type of summary section. I think it says sample target, maybe the sample target job. Now make sure it's relevant to your background. One time I was coaching somebody who was a salesperson that wanted to get into technical recruiting, and their whole resume was about all their sales work, but the top of the resume said technical recruiter. I'm like, that's a lie. You're not, you've never done that work before. And sometimes I'm kind of direct when I talk to people that way, because they prefer to hear it from me than to hear it from the hiring manager. So you want to make sure that sample target, like if it's a business analyst, it aligns with the work that you've done. Contribute, and this sounds like an objective statement, contribute my experience. What you want to do, as Aaron mentioned when he was talking about the summary section, you want it to be a statement about what you bring, the skills you bring, not an objective of what you're looking for. You don't want that. You want it more of a statement about who you are. And the next section really does kind of summarize who you are. You're an expert negotiator, analytical champion. I'm not sure what that means. That's kind of buzzwordy-ish. Be careful about that.
Yeah, I'm
sure
and this, if I may say, I feel like if you could take these three characteristics and you could potentially summarize them in each a sentence, perhaps, that would be more more of an optimal way to present yourself, because this, frankly, I would, as a recruiter, I would not read it.
Yeah, I wouldn't read those paragraphs. And if these
too many words.
Yeah, if these three key skills didn't align with the top three skills of that job, I would probably put it aside.
Move along, yep.
Okay. And then under experience, I like how you have the company name and the years. The role is bolded. And sometimes I've seen the reverse. Do you have a preference, Aaron, on whether the company name and the date should be bolded or the?
Personally, from an I standpoint, I like the company name to be bolded. Generally, unless it's not if it's an unknown company or something that's a smaller company, I'm fine with the explanation of what they do. I guess it really just depends on the person, right? It's fine. But then the senior consultant airlines, I usually like that to be modified somehow, either bolded or, italics or not, depending on what the person has done with the company and the date. I prefer bolding, but
yes,
for company and date.
I agree with you, because that looks kind of bottom heavy to have something lower be bolded. So I think the top line and the date should be bolded. And then I don't think that italics description of a pretty well-known company is needed. And the senior consultant airlines could be bolded, and you could also
italicize
it too.
I've seen, if I can cut in here, I've seen some resumes where after the job title or whatever, you'll put on there, report it to vice president of so-and-so or something. Is that something that is helpful, or is it unnecessary?
I think it depends on the type. Like if you're a controller reporting directly to a CEO versus a accounting manager reporting to a controller, it could be helpful. Or if you're a basically the senior salesperson in an organization, you're reporting directly to the CEO, that could be helpful. Or if you're an EA, right, an executive administrative assistant, and you report into a C level or director level, that would be important. In the scenarios where it's just, you know, I had a manager, I don't personally think it's as relevant. I don't know what Carol's thought is on it.
Yeah, I agree. Just for pertinent roles, especially like that admin type of example, you know, reporting to a CFO, that would be important. But if I'm an HR generalist reporting to an HR business partner, no, it would not. Okay. We'll just spend another minute on this particular resume.
I mean, if I may offer something else, in terms of the descriptions or the bullet points, after the first 7 to 10 words, I'm done. When it comes to underneath their job, I would even say 5 to 7 words. That's a lot of, like, you have 2 sentences in a bullet point. I would suggest, if you want them to be read, to make the bullet points small, less, more poignant, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Okay, great. And I want to point out something about verbs that's very important, and I see this in many ways. This is a job that looks like it ended in April 2020. I have something here in the present tense. That should be past tense, like in the same paragraph. Now that's in the past tense, which is correct, and that's in the past tense, which is correct. So be very careful about those verbs. And here's a past one with present tense.
Yep.
So.
And while it may seem very particular, I will tell you, recently in the last 2 weeks, I've had somebody passed over a job because they had the wrong tense.
Yes, I've had that happen too. Okay. And formatting of dates, the formatting's different here. I would be more consistent with that. And I guess these are roles within that same company. Okay, good. All right. We have 1 minute to look at the next resume, Jeff.
You can go a little bit more. We're not, we don't have a time constraint. As long as we get done by 3 o'clock, we're good.
Yeah.
Today, so.
Okay. It's 3 o'clock. We're not going to keep everybody another hour. Okay.
You're going to pull mine up. I removed all the top because I de-identified. So I pulled out my LinkedIn and my phone number and all that. So it is in there, but I just want to let you know.
Okay. And Jeff, my screen just paused. It's saying screen share pause, stop screen share. There we go. Okay, now I can bring it up again. And I apologize, I wasn't able to hear.
Michael said that he had de-ID'd his resume, so he does have the LinkedIn, the phone number, email.
Oh, okay, that's fine. Okay, good. Okay, so Operations and Inventory Senior Executive. Yeah, that's a title, probably the lines.
It hadn't popped up yet for us.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry.
I'm going to
New
go
share.
ahead and download it myself.
New share. There we go. Thank you, Jeff.
There you go. Now we're good.
Okay, now we're good. I like the heading there. I'm just going to spend a quick 60 seconds going through here. So we have VP, ASD Healthcare, usually company name first, then the title. Dates, right, justified. Okay, too many bullets. Nobody can absorb that much. The human mind actually can only absorb 3 things, but we'll live with 5 or 8. Okay, looks like the verbs are in good shape. Doing a quick run through here. See, this is a good number of bullets, and 1 to 2 words per bullet. Not seeing it.
I don't see results.
Results.
I see, well, this is what you did, but what was the result of what you did?
Okay. And I see
It
this
seems as if you were trying to push it to just 1 page. Is that right?
Yeah, it looks. Yeah. It does look scrunched, and so I would use more real estate at the top of your resume to have this summary sentence be maybe only 3 lines, and then have areas of expertise with 9, key words that align to the job you're looking for. And with all the work you've done, there are probably, if you think of your career, there's probably 3 or 4 major accomplishments where you've reduced cost. From an operations manager position, you may want to consider adding a section saying key accomplishments before you get into your experience, really highlight those big accomplishments from your career. And if you talk further about your resume, I'd be happy to do that. So, okay, good.
Well, and by doing that, he could also reduce the number of bullet points underneath each job.
Yeah,
because of that.
excellent.
I like it. Awesome.
And at this time, I'll turn it back over to Jeff. And while Jeff's doing his final summary, if you want to go into chat and type in a keyword about what resonated most with you about today's session. So if you want to give us some feedback while Jeff's doing his final statement, that'd be great. Type us a little word about what was most resonant or important for you to learn today.
Well, Carol, thank you very much. Aaron, thank you very much for being with us this week. Hope you'll join us again in the future. Really appreciate it. It's always great to get other comments. I've always joked that it would be great to get have an MMA match, get a ring, and throw all the resume experts in the ring, and it'd be a knockdown drag out until we come out with the perfect resume. Because what Carol wants to see and what Aaron wants to see and what I'd want to see could all be slightly different, and that there is no perfect resume. And I think a lot of people get hung up on analysis paralysis, thinking that I'm spending all this time, I got to make it right, just the object is to get that phone call. And if your resume is not getting that phone call, why doesn't it get those phone calls? And I think some of the things we talked about today, making sure you've got results on it, making sure you just tell the recruiter only what they're asking for, so they can easily see that what you can do is what is in the job description, and those matching those keywords is just a real big thing. So both of y'all, thank you all very, very much. Just as a reminder, tomorrow, the North Dallas Career Focus Group tomorrow morning at 9:30. Our speaker is also a recruiter from Rick Martinez will be with us talking about the 10 real reasons your job search isn't working. So please join us tomorrow morning at 9:30. We'll be on Facebook and Zoom. And you can always check out the CareerDFW calendar for all the webinars and teleseminars that are going on and get all the links to get to those events. Just as a reminder, every Tuesday we talk about LinkedIn, every Wednesday we talked about interviewing, Thursdays resumes, and Fridays the North Dallas Plano Career Focus Group is online. Just as a reminder, these sessions will be have been recorded and will be on the CareerDFW Facebook page and on the Career USA YouTube channel. Please be sure to check each page and subscribe to both. Here's the what the Facebook page looks like. Be sure if you go there that you click on the little red arrow down there where it says following. When you do that, every time we go live, you'll see an alert on your cell phone telling you that we're now streaming live. And where that blue arrow is, that's where all the videos are located. And you can see all the past videos from the past month that we've been putting out there. On the YouTube channel, you can click, the best thing to do is, if you can, click on playlist, and you'll pop up with some categories. And the first category here is effective resumes. And at the very bottom it says view full playlist. And when you do that, up will pop all the lessons that we've done here in the past. You can always go back and review things. And if you're interested in one of the other titles for interviewing, for LinkedIn, you can click on that full playlist and you can see the topics and what we've been talking about each week. So just as a reminder, CareerDFW is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We've got no full or part-time employees. All of our speakers, and including me, I'm a volunteer. We all help out. We're all here to help you in your career, help you get ahead. And we survive on donations. So please consider, when you do get your next job, please consider making a donation. And if your company makes matching donations, please be sure to look for the CareerDFW name so your donation gets doubled. If you don't find our name, please let me know so I can get on the list. I've already gotten on a couple of the list, and we'd like to be able to help, it'd be appreciated if y'all could help us out however you can so we can continue what we're doing here. So everybody, Aaron and Carol, once again, thank you all very much. Have a great week, and we will see everybody maybe tomorrow morning at 9:30 or one day next week. Have a great Memorial Day weekend.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.
Thank you.